Over the last couple of years, especially affected by COVID, the digital divide has become an increasingly important issue in the community. And where we've talked about it for a long time and had a lot of people doing a lot of work, the level of civic interest has really risen. The level in which people who are in the digital divide are disconnected from essential needs, services, and goods has become more apparent. And critically, the amount of funding available to address this issue at a federal level all the way down to a local level has really expanded. And it's really been a great time for the growth of the work, even as it has highlighted the depth of the need. We've seen a lot of people who have been at the table for a long time continue to devote resources to grow their organizations, to grow their capacity, and to collaborate in new ways. And we've also seen people who really weren't at the table before, specifically around digital inclusion and digital equity issues, try to figure out what role they ought to be playing and how we best ought to collaborate. And so, about a year ago, we started working on what we're calling a regional agenda around broadband connectivity and digital equity. Agenda, I think, is an important word because we're not really developing a strategy. The work is too broad. There are too many people that are engaged in this work. And one of the problems is that it's not any one person's job or one organization's job to solve. There isn't somebody with the resources that is equipped or the mission or the mandate to kind of do all of these things. But we think it's really useful to have a community-wide framework in which to evaluate different opportunities and different investment strategies and different organizational mandates or things that people might get involved in. And even though we've been at this work for a very long time, we don't have a common set of goals or a shared set of kind of what the end state looks like when we talk about the digital inclusion and digital equity ecosystem. And so that's the idea behind this agenda. And it's a little bit different than how we talk about digital inclusion oftentimes, which is in terms of the three-legged stool. The three-legged stool being, access to the internet, a device, and the skills, the literacy to know how to use it. That all makes a lot of sense on a household level. And honestly, that is kind of the unit at which we've been working from the outset. How do we get households signed up? How do we get household devices? How do we make sure we get people in classes? And until you've seen this kind of civic groundswell of interest, that really was the unit that made sense to operate at. But those elements don't work quite so well when we look at a system level. Because what people really want to achieve when they talk about digital equity and when they talk about digital inclusion is quality of life improvements. We want education outcomes. We want healthcare outcomes. We want economic opportunity and mobility outcomes. We want to see these things sort of lift up society. We want to see the promise of digital transformation realized in people's lives. And running a fiber cable down their street or putting a computer in their house doesn't get there. And that's okay, right? We still need to do those things, and we still need to do those things at a household level. But in the same way that buying groceries for a family isn't going to lift them out of poverty, neither is providing internet or a computer. And so we need to kind of frame our agenda around broadband, around connectivity, around digital equity, and really around digital transformation, I think in a little bit different way. And so that's kind of the process that we've been working on. And we've engaged a number of different community organizations and partners and individuals who are in the digital divide. Had hundreds of phone conversations with different people about what their needs are and about what their pain points are. And now have started to frame up a bit of a framework for this agenda. And ultimately, we'll develop strategies and tactics that sit in this. There are other organizations and other efforts within the community to develop more targeted investment plans and some more targeted strategies. And we want to make sure that those fit into this agenda framework also. But I think having sort of a common framework and an agenda and set of goals and way that we talk about this work is really important. And so we're looking at this agenda in 5 different dimensions. The first is network capacity. The second is service quality. The third is access and affordability. The fourth is competence and participation in digital life. And the fifth is excellence, innovation, and growth. talk a little bit about each of these because they each hit a little bit different things, and we're really inviting feedback on this framework. We think it reflects a lot of what we have heard in the community to date, but need to make sure it hangs together with how the people that are doing this work and are invested in the community are actually talking about and thinking about the challenges that we face ahead. So network capacity. Network capacity is about the physical infrastructure. It is about building broadband networks, 5G networks, potentially LoRa networks, other kinds of data transmission and storage networks that can meet the needs that our society has. That's an important result. It's not in and of itself going to move the needle. It may mean that no one accesses it, but if you don't have the underlying infrastructure there, if you don't have a network that is sufficiently built out to handle all of the things that we ultimately want to do with it, you're going to have a really hard time doing any of those things. So we think having a focus on network capacity is really critical. The second piece is service quality. And this is something that I think gets lost a lot, even at the household level, because there are so many variables that affect whether or not the network that it is built, exists, and is in place is actually able to be accessed in a high quality way. And this could be your home Wi-Fi network. It could be where you have your router placed. It could be external factors on the network that just mean you can't get the access in your home. Maybe your device isn't a high quality enough device to actually get the service level that you need to do what it is that you need to do. Maybe you have 5 different people who are accessing your network in home, and you don't know where people should be sitting or how they should be arranging it or how you should be load balancing your network usage to get the service quality that you need when you need it. So there aren't a lot of tools developed around service quality. This isn't really an easy thing to measure, but it's a really critically important thing to have some level of focus on. Otherwise, when you invest in network capacity or you invest in our third element, access and affordability, you might be making the wrong investments, or you might be trying to solve the problems in ways that aren't really helpful. The third element, we've seen a lot of activity in this area in access and affordability, and it's critically important. And I think we've done more in the last couple of years around access and affordability, locally, statewide, nationally, than we've seen in quite some time. People need to be able to access the network. They need to be able to afford it. They need to be able to have service in their home. They need to be able to have service on their device. If it's outside of their home, where they need to access the network, that access has to be available. And we need to help ensure that we understand what the barriers are that people are facing, and that we do what we can as appropriate to help overcome those barriers. Now, the 3 legs of the stool don't quite stop there, because they kind of continue into digital literacy. And we sort of bake that into this 4th element, which is competence and participation in digital life. But it really goes a bit further than just digital literacy. So when we talk about competence and participation in digital life, sure, part of that is basic digital skills. I can turn my computer on, I have an email address, I know how to use it. I might be able to use the Office suite or the Google Docs suite, Google Sheets, and things like that. But there are a whole other range of things that when we think about someone who is a full participant in digital society, it could be the ability to transact e-commerce and to be able to do shopping online, entertainment consumption, accessing government services or other digital services or human services online, access to education or healthcare in ways that people who we would say just are accustomed to digital tools, people who aren't in the digital divide, kind of everyday people who go about their everyday life, interact with and use technology. That's really where we want people to be able to get. Again, we don't have a great framework for thinking about this. We certainly don't have a great framework for measuring it. But as part of putting this kind of agenda together, I think that's where we need to think about how we set the goalposts, and how we outline activities, programs, and investments that really create a little bit more balance, and set in some ways a higher bar than, well, great, I've got a computer now and I can turn it on. When we think even kind of in this 4th bucket of kind of participation in digital life. And then the 5th area is excellence, innovation, and growth. And that's where we get into really part of the work that isn't typically framed in digital inclusion. And even for us as an organization, we sometimes compartmentalize our innovation work and our inclusion work. But part of the idea behind this kind of 5th bucket is that we really want those to be a little bit more integrated. We want to have startups and entrepreneurial growth widespread across the community. We want not just basic skills, but emerging tech skills, advanced coding skills to be widely represented in our community, for people to have access to the next generation of technology tools, whether it's crypto and Web3 and decentralized networks, or we're looking at augmented reality and virtual reality, or advanced data analysis. Some of the things that feel out there, and which always are going to be out there, right? I mean, these things that are at the cutting edge of technology by nature are never going to be things that everyone does. So it's not about making sure that everyone can do these things, but that having these things baked into our community and kind of cultivating an attitude of excellence, but also an attitude of inclusion broadly across society, who can participate at the leading edge of where technology is going. And so that's kind of the framework that we are using within each of these categories. Again, we've identified some strategies and tactics and some different programs that we've observed in the work that we do around the country, looking at kind of what's worked in some places, and other things that we've just heard come out of our own partner network here in Kansas City. And we want to start taking a more active role as a community in cultivating these things, in helping to connect the work that is happening between different stakeholders across the community. And we think having an agenda in place is really important. We have heard a lot that things are disconnected, that maybe all the organizations don't collaborate or cooperate as well as they could, that it's hard to keep track of what people are doing. And honestly, that's part of the territory, right? So we know that's going to be true. I don't think we're going to solve for that, but it is clear because of the amount of extra investment available, because of all of the attention, of all of the dollars, we need to do a little bit better job than we've done. And so we're excited to continue the engagement process and to continue to get feedback. Would love people's feedback on those that kind of breakdown, because I think there's still room to iterate on that and include various perspectives. And as we get into some of the more strategic and tactical program elements, really hope that that is a robust enough framework to include the great work that all of our community partners are doing.